Welcome into Tiger Details, this new weekly recruiting podcast with myself, Julie Boudwin, and Mr. Louisiana versus all y'all, Jerit. And let me just start by saying, if you don't subscribe to Tiger Details or Louisiana versus all y'all, be sure to hit that subscribe button to stay updated with all the latest recruiting content regarding LSU and throughout the rest of the state of Louisiana. Jerit, we're going to keep it short and sweet today. Not too much time, but let's get straight to it. The 2023 class has wrapped up nicely for LSU. The Tigers finished with the number 5 overall class in the state, according to the Rivals rankings. But we're going to turn our focus onto 2024. And I want to briefly start with talking about one recruit who you followed pretty closely. You were at his commitment over the weekend, and that is LCA's Juwan Johnson, who picked Colorado over LSU in Florida. Jerit, just what was the vibe like out there in Lafayette? Did you get the feeling that there was a lot of support? Was it a surprise? Just kind of your overall thoughts on that.
Sure. Yeah, the vibe Saturday at Lafayette Christian was very much just supportive of Juwan Johnson in whatever his decision was going to be. I think there was some initial surprise probably when he had appeared to trend Colorado's direction after that recent visit, because he is a guy that a lot of people anticipated would end up, the next great Lafayette area player headed to go wear purple and gold in Baton Rouge. But by the time the ceremony itself kicked off on Saturday afternoon, I think people had realized that Colorado was the move for Juwan. And it was really just a matter of supporting and celebrating a guy that is beloved with that program and in that area. He's someone that his family and his teammates and his coaches and even some of his predecessors from Lafayette who were on that LSU roster. I asked him, what did guys like a Jordan Allen or Sage Ryan or Terrence Welsh or any of those guys tell him through the last week or two? And he said, everyone said, just follow your heart. And they would be very supportive of him wherever he's been. He spoke to his backstory, some of the challenges he's been through. He's just a guy that has been through a lot, is a really high character kid that I was fortunate enough to be there his first high school game as a true freshman, as a backup quarterback being thrown in because the senior starter got hurt. And so he had a lot put on him at an early age, has always lived up to and exceeded every bar set for him. And now getting ready for his senior year is a huge leader for that entire school in that area. And so I think at one point they were surprised that he was headed to Deion Sanders and company, but ultimately they're riding with him wherever he was going.
What he did this past season and the numbers that he put up was just absolutely outstanding. And he's one of those guys that, at the next level, could he play both ways? And, off camera, you and I talked a little bit about that as something that he mentioned was a big reason why he picked Colorado, and that Prime Time offered him the chance to play both sides, not just play cornerback, which is obviously still a big selling point for him, going play for Deion Sanders, one of the greatest ever. He's got the gold jacket to prove it. But the opportunity to also play on the offensive side of the ball, it seemed like that kind of weighed heavy in his decision as well.
Yeah, he mentioned that a few different times on Saturday, and I asked him why that was such a priority for him. And it was a pretty Juwan answer in the sense that he just wants to impact the game for his team as much as possible. He wants to be out there helping his group win at all times. And particularly if he's not going to be a quarterback at the next level. And obviously, you're probably not putting your quarterback out there playing two ways, but if you're a DB receiver, DB, just kind of wildcat type guy, there is a little bit more of an opportunity. And that's something he said was important to him. I think they'll make him be really, really good on one side before they start throwing both sides of the ball at him. But his anticipation of getting to be a two-way guy, and he mentioned Travis Hunter as kind of an example of someone who has had that opportunity under Deion Sanders. And that's something that is important to Juwan, among a variety of factors, but we'll see how it all works out once he gets there and actually gets into the college strength program and having to pick up those playbooks on both sides and all those things.
And obviously we're still 10 months away from the early signing period, National Signing Day, early signing period, whatever you want to call it, December. because that's pretty much how it seemingly wrapped up this past season. As far as recruiting goes for LSU, everything was pretty much signed, sealed, delivered in December. So 10 months away from that, we'll see if this sticks with Juwan. We'll see if LSU turns it up anymore. We'll see if, even if they do turn it up, does he stick by this Colorado commitment? Something I wanted to ask you, just and it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. And obviously on the field, that's going to matter, the on the field product. We're in the off season right now, and this is the first for Deion Sanders at Colorado. But just look, what's your take? He's been obviously taking Juwan out of LSU's backyard is a really big deal considering how long LSU had been on him. But what's your take on Colorado and Prime, and just, is this a trend that LSU and other schools are going to have to, continue to fight off? It's a really interesting dynamic seeing the way he interacts with the recruits, and obviously his game speaks for itself, and obviously what he did at Jackson State speaks for itself. But things are new in Colorado. They've got a lot of things they need to fix, and fix in a hurry if they want to be competitive in their schedule in this upcoming season. So what's your overall take? Is this a trend do you see?
I think it's something to absolutely monitor. We talk a lot about Juwan Johnson right now, and the circumstances around the 2023 name I'm about to mention are vastly different, obviously. But Omarion Miller, a guy that was a one-time LSU commit and then a Nebraska commit, he ends up signing with Colorado 5 weeks ahead of this Juwan Johnson announcement, and there were a lot of different dynamics that led to that one, and so a little bit of a different story. Juwan surprising a lot of folks, not just in Louisiana, but in that LSU building with his announcement this past week. And I look at kind of the old saying of, once is a fluke, twice is a coincidence, three times is a pattern. And I do include Omarion in that sum, and look at this as a little bit of a coincidence, but a big moment to have a guy that is as well respected as Juwan Johnson in this 2024 class, give Colorado its, in my opinion, second straight class with a top 10 Louisiana guy on board for that class. And to watch some of the reactions to Juwan's announcement was particularly interesting. He's a guy that, he's on a team that has a Sandy Lewis and a Melvin Hills III, who are additionally huge Louisiana prospects in that 2024 class. He was working out with his fellow cornerback over there at LCA, Ty Lee, leading up to the announcement. And Ty's a guy that doesn't have those big offers that the other three have yet, but I do think blows up and becomes a Power 5 guy this spring. You see an LSU commit in a Xavier Atkins, who's a Jonesboro Hodge guy who now has relocated to Texas, but he's a recent Colorado target and is excited to see what's happening there. And so to watch those reactions should be a little bit concerning. I wouldn't, hit the panic button just yet. And we will ultimately see what the product looks like this fall for Colorado in year one. We'll see if Juwan Johnson is still headed to Colorado in December, as you mentioned. One thing of note is going into that announcement Saturday, in the rival system, we can't project someone who's already committed to flip. And so I thought about just leaving the LSU prediction and banking on a flip down the stretch, but LCA hasn't had a history of flips. They've had some guys commit early and they stick with it. And Juwan, and just kind of the way he's wired and his value of character and loyalty and faith and all these things, I think as long as that signing day is away, it's going to be now really tough to get him to go back on his word from Saturday down the stretch if LSU does continue to pursue. But it's definitely, I wouldn't say it's a trend just yet, but it could be getting close to that and something worth monitoring.
It's funny you say that, because I also thought about just leaving mine where it was and 10 months. But as you said, you can't, once someone's committed, you can't change it in the rival system. So I guess it's better to be accurate with those things for the time being. But let's look at a few additional Louisiana 2024 playmakers who I would say are probably some of the biggest targets, especially in state for LSU, in Kolaj Cobbins over at Destrehan, Wardell Mack, Trey'Dez Green, who you recently saw playing basketball. These are three guys that I have future cast in on for LSU to land. You might as well. I haven't looked at your profile in a minute, but I personally thought Trey'Dez especially would have been committed already, especially when Ricky Collins committed and signed in his last recruiting cycle, just because I know how tight those two are, and they played 7-on-7 ball together with F3. So I think we see a little bit of movement, whether it's those three guys or just additional pieces in the 24 class. I think we'll see more movement in that once these next few weeks and months of spring ball get started, and we see more people on campus. Obviously, March is going to be a big recruiting visitor every weekend. It almost seems like it's going to be a big weekend for LSU once spring ball gets started. But Jerit, what's your thoughts on those three players? Am I right? Do you have future casts on those guys to LSU, or do you see them in the class ultimately?
I think there's a really good chance all three end up in LSU's class. I think I have a future cast in on Trey'Dez, potentially Kolaj. I don't know if I've put anything on Wardell yet. I haven't seen him in person or chatted with him as recently as the other couple.
Right.
I know he has that Alabama offer that came in early as well. And so, I mean, you and I had talked about it. He seems like one of those next LSU versus Alabama kids down the stretch. Trey'Dez, you kind of put on my radar that he might be involved in that hot summer stretch this past summer where LSU was adding 23 commits left and right and added Xavier Atkins at that point as well. And I think with him, he's juggling so much with basketball and football that it kind of adds that additional, not to mix a third sport in there, but additional curveball into his recruitment.
Right.
In terms of, can he play both? Does he want to prioritize one over the other? And just in terms of his personal schedule, jumping back and forth from one to the other, I think it makes time kind of fly on his end a little bit.
Right.
And that the calendar may have gotten away from him in some ways as well, as he focuses right now on his fantastic basketball season before even turning the page to 7-on-7 and camps and whatnot. But I think he's the one that I maybe feel most confident in, and certainly he and Kolaj a little bit more so for me than Wardell. Seeing Kolaj's reaction to just even prior to the offer, some of the recruitment by LSU and being on their radar and being on campus and those things clearly meant quite a bit. And then the offer came into play and meant that much more. And those are three guys that I think by any standards are top 10 guys in this Louisiana class, if not all top 5. And so particularly with a guy like a Juwan Johnson currently looking like he's headed elsewhere, the spotlight grows that much bigger on those three.
Yeah, definitely. And I think those are, as you said, Trey'Dez of the three would be the one. Like I said, we thought last summer that he could pop in LSU's favor, but playing multi sports like he is, and he's so good in basketball, he's so good in football. The calendar does kind of get away from you. There's not as many available weekends to take visits or to do this or to play 7-on-7 whenever you've got multiple things going on like that. But as I mentioned earlier in the video, Jerit is Mr. Louisiana versus all y'all. And I'm sure if you're watching this, you probably know that already. He covers recruiting across the state. I'm not sure there's a more tapped in person in the local media that knows more about just recruits and kids from top to the bottom of the boot. He doesn't just focus on LSU. And so I thought he would be a good person to bring on and talk about a couple of other guys that LSU could be watching. These guys don't have LSU offers yet, but I can guarantee you they are on the LSU staff radar. And that's Kavion Broussard, Ahmad Bro, who is the new Duke commitment, and Deshaun McBride, who has some really impressive early offers from Baylor, Houston, Ole Miss, among a few others. So Broussard obviously is one, I think, of the three that may be one who could get an offer before the other two. He was just on LSU's campus 2 weeks ago. He's in communication with Brad Davis. And, that's one that they're monitoring closely. I'm expecting to see him probably turn up at one of the camps over the summer. And then we'll see how that goes. But if LSU did offer him, I would expect him to potentially jump all over that. So just what are your thoughts on these guys, and what do you know of them? And could they be guys, in your opinion, that LSU comes in and offers late, offers early, or are they LSU type of players?
Yeah, I mean, very good players, all of which have now Power Five offers.
Yeah.
Kavion is a big, long, athletic offensive tackle who I think when you see him get to college and tackle on some muscle is going to be that much more impressive. Right now, he's still a bit young, thin, but quick on his feet. And you mentioned that if LSU came into play for him, you think he would probably be quick to jump on board. Zachary guys outside of Eli Holstein who have gone through and gotten LSU offers have been pretty on board with with wanting to stay close to home. And obviously Eli gets a fantastic opportunity to go to Tuscaloosa and play for Nick Saban. And there were a lot of other dynamics at play there with his recruitment. And so he's the outlier, though. While he's fresh, he is the exception to the norm for Zachary. Ahmad is actually someone that he just committed to Duke. And my understanding is that he had spent some time as a younger guy living near Duke. His family lived up in that area.
Okay.
And so that was big for him.
Yeah, I didn't know that part of his story, but he's picked up some additional offers since that Duke offer, and I'm expecting him to kind of keep that snowball momentum going.
Yeah, they had a fantastic defense at Ruston this year, and his role and his teammate Jordan Guidry on either side of the line with big Christian Davis between them was a big piece of that, setting the table up front. But he came back from that Duke visit, picked up Ole Miss a few days later, and still committed to Duke the next day. And so it said quite a bit about how high of regard he held Duke in. But while he may have spent some time up there, he still very much considers himself a Louisiana guy. Also lived in the Lafayette area at one point, is up in Ruston now. And I think LSU would be a game changer. He's also someone I've seen react a bit to Deion Sanders and the Juwan Johnson announcement. So that could be one to watch in terms of, does that coincidence become a trend? And then I'm trying to remember the third guy that you mentioned. Oh yeah, Deshaun McBride from Denham Springs, who he was the most under the radar heading into this season, I think, of any of the guys we've mentioned.
Yeah.
But then has a record-setting fall for Denham Springs with at least 9 interceptions was the last total I had seen it at, and just
his recruitment's kind of blown up since.
Yeah, he showed up to an early F3 Elite 7-on-7 tryout / showcase. And as soon as he walked up, you saw heads turn at just kind of his physical stature already. And when I saw him pull off his hoodie or jacket or whatever it was and saw that it was denim, I realized it had to be it. There was no one else it could be that looked like that. And the way that he moves around on the back end of the defense and just the ball skills he has when anything is remotely close to his area of the field with the ball in the air is really impressive. And so I anticipated off of the fall that he'd blow up, and he's already started, but I think he's just the tip of the iceberg right now for what's coming his way.
Any guys you can think of that maybe we didn't mention? Any 24 names? I mean, obviously, you've been pretty focused on basketball the last few weeks, but I know you were out at the Battle Miami, 7-on-7 season. It's your favorite time of the year. That's all getting ramped up. So I'm sure I think I'll see you out in person in a few weeks from now down here in my neck of the woods for a big event. And then there's Battle New Orleans coming up. But any names just jumping out to you? Some guys, additional guys that maybe would have, LSU watching them closely.
Yeah, I think, sticking down in your neck of the woods, Kylan Billiot, the big receiver from Terrebonne, had a good performance last summer at LSU in camp and got a little private workout and looked good. And so I'm interested to see, where he's at this year now. I haven't seen him since that day in person.
Yeah.
A couple of more guys relevant to that bootleggers team. Kyle Williams from North Shore, who was a big player for them last year, is working his way back from an injury, but I think is one of the notable and still somehow underrated prospects in that 2024 class around the state. Brennan Thompson, Sean Preston Jr., and Shaz Preston's little cousin out at East Ascension was limited this fall at East Ascension because of an injury, but I think has been an underrated player throughout the course of his, his high school career and his recruitment. And I keep waiting for him to blow up. And the guy that I mentioned with regards to Juwan Johnson, Ty Lee, the really fantastic cornerback, an all-state guy at LCA, has not picked up much recruiting steam yet, but I think he's a guy that's going to be a Power 5 guy in the next couple of months in terms of where his recruitment takes off. Those are a few. I don't think that the 2024 class is necessarily as strong overall as some of the other recent classes we've seen, but there are definitely, a dozen and a half guys really notable, worth watching in that group, including Dominic McKinley, who just picked up the LSU offer last week, the big Acadiana defensive lineman, another one that's kind of fresh on the LSU minds.
That could be another one. That could be LSU, Alabama when it comes down to things in December. Before I let you go, there was one name I did want to mention when you were rattling off, and it's somebody I know you know well, and it's somebody that I know not as well as you, but I do know him. And it was somebody that was down in Miami. Is Major Burns' little brother, Tony.
Yeah.
Just talk about him. I mean, I've seen some of the highlights, some of the plays. He looked to be very impressive in that first 7-on-7 outing. He looks the part of Major. I mean, he looks just like Major when he's on the field. I don't know if he's as verbal. He looks like almost like identical to his brother. And so is that somebody you can see maybe LSU coming in on? Because I'm not quite sure yet. Has Tony started picking up offers?
It's been slow for him so far, but he's another one that I think is on the verge of a big pickup.
Yeah.
We saw him as baby. They called him Buddha around the house, little Buddha Burns, when Major was going through, and seeing him now, he is every bit as vocal, I think, as Major out there, which is, some of it's chatter, but some of it's really directing his teammates around. He and Landon Sylvie from Calvary Baptist were kind of the two quarterbacks of that bootleggers defense down at Battle Miami. And Tony has grown so much, both as a young man and just physically. He's a big, thick athlete that moved around really well and was very on top of the game. Any matchup they had, he was all over the place and just directed his teammates well, read everything very well, and was always around the ball because of his quick reactions. And he has decent speed to him too. Once he makes that read and closes, he's not going to get out there and blaze a 40 the way some of his peers might, but he's got good Division I speed. And so as he continues on this spring with 7-on-7 and camps and then gets to some of these colleges in the summer, he's definitely someone to watch in this 24 class.
I just keep thinking back to it just seems like it was a few years ago when we made that commitment video for Major, which he was a part of. And I can't believe just how much that Tony has developed in that short period of time. I can't remember the year, whether it was 2019 or 2020, but just how much he's grown in that short amount of time. And like I said, he looks the spitting image of his brother. So that's definitely another one we're going to be watching here on Tiger Details. And as I said, if you haven't subscribed yet, be sure to hit that subscribe button and check out all of Jerit's work on Louisiana versus all y'all. And we'll be back next week with another edition of a recruiting podcast over on Tiger Details. I'm Julie Boudwin. That's Jerit Roser. Thanks for tuning in.